Great. Thanks for that introduction and setting the tone for today's conversation. It's great to see some additional people coming in. We got a big room and lots of space, so do feel free to move on up front, join the conversation. I'm really excited to have the opportunity to be part of this great session on participatory plant breeding and hearing a little bit from the grower perspective on this topic. There we go. I would like to start with just a quick introduction of the Organic Farming Research Foundation. We are a small but national organization that works to help foster both the improvement as well as the widespread adoption of organic farming systems. And we do this sort of through three main areas of work. One is through research. We are small grant makers, making grants to support on-farm research. And I will say for any of you who are here, growers in the room, over the last couple of years, we've been focusing more on grants for farmer-led research projects. And we have a really wonderful publication called The Farmer's Guide to Conducting On-Farm Research, which definitely is relevant for breeding, participatory breeding as well. I have various copies, so if you want one or to learn more about our grant program, please come find me and grab some copies. We do a lot of grower education, and for us, that's mostly really translating the research findings and getting it out off the shelves of academia and into the hands of growers, making it useful for on-farm practices. So we have a whole bunch of online courses, short publications, do a lot of sources, and I have a couple of exciting things. One is stay tuned. If you're not on our newsletter, you should subscribe, but being launched in March, so in just a few weeks, is going to be a new searchable online hub of research findings, reports, and other resources for growers. So we're really excited to be rolling that out and hope it's useful to all of you. And you're welcome to share feedback on any ways we can continue to strengthen it and add the type of content you may be looking for. And last, but definitely not least, is advocacy. And for us, that means mostly representing the needs of organic farmers at the federal level, ensuring that research dollars are there, programs like conservation, technical, financial support to help growers be successful. I will pause it there. A little bit more on our research grants. We've invested millions of dollars over the last 30 years. 100% of those grants have been to support projects that are on farm. As I said, we are investing more in farmer-led research trials. Those dollar amounts of those grants are very small, but our research team really partners with growers who are interested in doing their own trials to help design the project, figure out how to collect data, and of course, be an ally in sharing results so that it can be useful to other growers. Just a few highlights that, as we work to build more grower education resources, we're getting a lot of engagement with the materials. It's super exciting. We've hosted 24 webinars last year with 4,000 attendees from around the country. We had a recent resource on crop livestock integration that was one of our most downloaded. But all this is just to say, if you feel like some of this might be useful for you, you should go to our website, check it out, sign up to be subscribers. I share updates on new content all the time, and also always welcome input on what other content we could add that would be useful, and it's there and free and available for the community. With that, I'm very excited to get to introduce our two panelists for this part of our agenda. They are active farmers, both of them, and have experience working with researchers and in the field of participatory plant breeding. Beth owns and operates Goodfoot Farm. It's a 10-acre biodynamic organic farm production with livestock, fruit, and vegetables. So we're really excited to hear from her. And then we have Pryor, who runs Red Prairie Farm in Oregon. He's also the president of the Organic Farmers Association. He's been farming since 2011, and he has a 92-acre farm that produces wheat, small grains for food, seed, as well as animal feed. So with that, I will pass it over to Beth to come up and...
Thanks, Brise. Okay. I'm not a technology person. There. Got it. I'm pretty excited to be here because I've never been to the Organic Seed Growers Conference because I'm not a seed grower and I'm not a breeder. So I'm a little bit out of my element, but I am a food farmer. So I grow food for other people. And we have a farm just west of here. So I've lived around the Corvallis area for almost 30 years now. And we grow vegetables, fruits. We have animals integrated into our system, certified organic and biodynamic. And then we market to the Corvallis Farmers Market and a CSA program, some restaurants, but all kind of direct to consumer. We love to know the people that eat our food. And so we grow a lot of things. It's kind of a pathology for me, but we grow probably 40 different crops. I lost count at 200 varieties. When the seed catalogs start landing in my mailbox because I'm kind of a hard copy person, in November, like everything stops so that I can sit down with like the first seed catalog, right? So I'm a total sucker for a seed variety description. I've been known to buy and try varieties solely on the merits of their description. So it's, and that's usually not a good decision, especially when it comes to chickens, actually, but I'm not going to go there. So yeah, we grow a lot of things, and we grow food for money, and it's kind of a tenuous proposition to do that in this day and age. And so we're pretty careful about what we grow, the varieties we grow. We pay a lot of attention to that, and we're trying to make money growing different varieties. So we're pretty interested in data, and we do a lot of that. And so in terms of, we're kind of just naturally trialing things, right? So we're always trying things on our own to know what's going to work in our system. And so I actually originally moved to Oregon to go to graduate school here. I went to Oregon State to get a degree in botany and plant pathology. And it was while I was in graduate school that I figured I wanted to actually be a farmer. And so I did finish my degree. And when I got out of school and started farming and going to market, I would run into my colleague, Jim Myers, who you guys probably, most of you know, some of you know, hopefully. He's our local vegetable breeder here. And he and I had done some work together when I was doing my graduate degree on the etiology of a root rot disease here in the Willamette Valley. And so Jim would come to our market booth, and he was pretty immersed in the Novick project at the time. And so he invited us to participate in Novick. So we joined the Novick program in the second cycle. And I was like, finally, I get to use this graduate degree, right? Like, I'm not just an overeducated farmer. Like, I can do something with this. And so we started running variety trials. You know, we would get the different varieties. Sometimes they would provide us with the plants. Sometimes we'd grow them out and we'd put them out in the field. And so my first round, I remember it was sweet peppers. Italian sweet peppers was the rage at that time. This is probably 2018. And I was like, by golly, I'm going to do a randomized complete block design. And I'm going to take like yield data, like per plant and ripening date. And then I'm going to take it to my son's like middle school classroom, and we're going to do a full-on blind taste test and collect data. And for real, I did that. And I've never done it again. Because it's a lot of work, right? But it was like, I mean, I wanted the data. And to this day, we still grow like the #1 red Italian sweet pepper that we generated data from in that trial. But the thing is you don't have to do that as a farmer engaged in participatory plant breeding. You know, so Novick really works around this mother-daughter trial concept, where these farms are serving as the daughter sites. So you may not even have all of the varieties that are being included in the trial, and you may or may not even get all the data that they're collecting on the mother sites, which are these research farms associated with the universities. But as the grower out there, you are collecting a lot of data, whether it's anecdotal that you're sharing with your researchers, or hard data if you are actually measuring things. But I remember we were doing a cabbage variety trial, and I remember talking to Jem about the cabbage, and I was like, well, you know, we're market growers, so our needs, and we don't really spray anything, so we need a pretty clean cabbage coming out of the field. We have heavy slug pressure here. So we found that if we grow cabbages with a pretty broad leaf wrap, it would protect that bottom side of the cabbage, right?
Whereas if you have like a narrow leaf contact point and then a narrow kind of leaf coming up, you get a lot of exposure of the underlayments like at the plant crown there where the cabbage is growing. It's like we can't grow those because we get too much damage on the bottom of the cabbage. So it's got to have, that leaf wrap. So being able to communicate with researchers about what our priorities are for taking crops to market or even to processing becomes really critical to help then feed that back into our own systems. And at the same time, with Novik, what we really appreciated is they were also working with seed companies to look at both open pollinated and even hybrid varieties, and then also measuring them against these checks, right? So you'd have like the commercial variety for whatever crop we were looking at. They would have these kind of commercial checks, which really, for a market grower or a commercial grower who has a certain goal, whether it be for yield or marketability, having those commercial checks can be really important for deciding to switch varieties or to incorporate other varieties into your program. And then also being able to communicate to researchers like how our needs might differ. So the cabbage is one thing, but for example, when we grow, we really like adapted seeds, butternut squash, because they have this crazy mix of butternut with a lot of variety. You get small butternuts, you get big butternuts. We're market farmers. We have people that want small butternuts, and we have people that want big butternuts. So we want that diversity of shape. But then for another crop, we need uniformity, and we need it to hold in the field, for example. So being really able to be in conversation with breeders and researchers about those needs on a commercial scale gets to be really critical. And that was really gratifying too, like as a farmer, to be connected to that community and be like, well, these are my needs, right? Like this is my market, these are my needs, and then have somebody working on that for you, because there's no way you have time to do that work on your own farm. You're looking at pieces of it, but not the whole picture. So that's great. Novik's been great. We are always doing variety trials on the farm. I see Jim most Saturdays at the market, and we, start talking about varieties and things that are important. So I'll just introduce the thing I've been thinking about, which is this amazing genus and species, right? The Brassica oleracea. So, one of our biggest challenges as food farmers is, making money, right? Growing the food that we can make enough money at. And so the brassicas are notorious. We grow a lot of brassicas here in the valley. It's a great climate for us. We grow too many, so it causes problems. But the Brassica oleracea, in my opinion, is like the most amazing food crop there is. There's so many of them. There's so much diversity in that group. They grow so well for us. Everything from, a cabbage to a sprouting broccoli, right? And in between. And so commercial growers, whether we're small scale like us, organic growers, or the big guys, for the most part, we're growing for a lot of those Brassica oleracea, we're growing hybrid conventional seed varieties because that's what we get the return on. So it doesn't feel good, right? As an organic grower, and we get better every year at purchasing organic seed to grow our organic crops. But the landscape certainly has changed and gotten more. There's more available for organic growers in terms of organic seed. But the fact of the matter is we will always grow a hybrid collard seed along with our Old Tommy Blue up there on the right, which that is. I have grown one seed crop, and it's that one because I just love it so much. You have to do the things you love. But we're also going to grow a non-organic hybrid collard seed because I can harvest like 8 times more off of the same row, basically, that I can my OP. And when I'm trying to pay people to do this work, that's just a tough place to be. And so it's really important, I think, to be in these kinds of communities with this participatory plant breeding so that breeders and seed growers too can understand what the needs of commercial farmers are and can incorporate those into their decision making on their research priorities, basically, so that we can keep growing more organic seed and more open pollinated seed. We don't really grow broccoli anymore, for example, because you grow a conventional hybrid broccoli in an organic system, and you can grow just like this gorgeous broccoli, right, to take to market. So it comes from a conventional system. And it might even, we don't grow CMS varieties because we're Denver certified biodynamic, but it's also likely a CMS variety. And so it's, so then I grow out the organic hybrids, again, because I'm trying to get yield per square foot to generate revenue. But the organic hybrids, not as many of them as marketable. They don't look as good. They don't yield as much. And so we drop broccoli for the most part from our plant. But we love Piracicaba, which is an OP, open, it's a non-heading broccoli. We grow it as like a broccolini. We get it from adaptive seeds. I'm not sure that they're actually storing it. But in that case, there is somebody working to maintain these varieties that are commercially viable for food growers, basically. So yeah, we would love to see and be working on more of that. Yeah. Pryor.
That's not what I wanted to do. Well, good morning. There's a Brise. Can you give me a hand? Pull off my slides first. So I'm Pryor Garnett. I am a beginning farmer, despite the gray hair. It's a second career for me. I've been farming. Well, this will be my 9th harvest this year, so I really don't know what I'm doing. And I experiment a lot. Beth mentioned that she does a lot of variety trials. I'm an inveterate variety trialer, which, well, you got to be careful because it can be somewhat uncontrollable, at least for me. It's a lot of fun. Trying new varieties, seeing how they perform is just a hoot. I got started with variety trialing and what we were calling participatory plant breeding when some researchers from Washington State University that I had run across by accident were looking for farms to do field trials of buckwheat. Now, buckwheat is not a true wheat. It's not a grain. It's a pseudo grain. It's flowering. And I had never grown it before, but it sounded, I take it back. I had grown it before as a cover crop. And I thought, well, yeah, it worked all right. But they wanted to do some field trials. They were looking for folks that were willing to do buckwheat. And I was willing because if you look at the picture in the upper left there, that was my very first crop ever. It was a cover crop of buckwheat in a field that had been used for pastured poultry. And it just grew like wildfire. It was wonderful. It was beautiful. The bees loved it. The place was just humming with bumblebees. And I couldn't resist getting a picture of me with buckwheat up to my waist. And so I said, well, I've grown buckwheat before. And they said, want to try some? I said, yeah, sure. So they said, look, we'll give you some varieties and just plant a little bit. Well, I can't plant a little bit. I don't have small plots. I'm a grain grower. I mean, the smallest thing that I can possibly do is 12 feet wide and about 400 feet long. That's not a small plot. And I said, but, give me enough seed and I'll give it a shot. So they said, yeah, we'll give you 30 pounds each of 5 different seeds. Cool. And what I was thinking in the back of my mind was, that'll be pretty. I planted them in strips. And the lower left-hand picture here is the buckwheat. Those are the 2 pictures. And I planted them in strips, thinking that I should be, kind of careful about this. I put fallow alleys between them. I did some heavy planting. I did some light planting. I did some early planting. I did some late planting. The heavy and light didn't make a bit of difference. The early and late didn't make a bit of difference. But the varieties really behaved differently. I had 5 different varieties, and some of them were beautiful, canopied out. Others, not so much. Some used a little more water. Some used a little less. They really behaved differently. Cool. So I invited the researchers back, and they came and took their samples, and they took about 1 square meter of each one, which left a whole lot. I mean, you can see the size of that field there. That's about an 800-foot strip. There was an awful lot of buckwheat just going to go to waste there. And I can't waste it. So, fire up the swather, swat it, fire up the combine, pick it up, we run it through the combine, just mix it all together. And I thought, that might be a decent cover crop. Then I got to thinking about it. I had been donated some of the best genetics that those researchers could come up with. And they were trying. It would be kind of foolish for me to just throw them away. Some of them did better on my land. They all did okay. I thought, buckwheat is kind of a promiscuous plant. It's pollinated. And so what I harvested from that was not pure varieties anymore. It was kind of a mix. I thought, well, the ones that did well will grow well the next time around. The ones that didn't do well, they'll weed themselves out of the population. And if I do this 5 or 6 times, I might have a buckwheat population that really likes my land. So that's what I'm doing. And that's my participatory plant breeding for buckwheat. And it's not particularly scientific. It's more Darwinian. The stuff that survives gets to be replanted next year, and the ones that didn't make seed, well, so long. And I'm in my second year of that. Red wheat is something else that I wanted to try. Certified organic only, and for me, the older varieties tend to have better performance. I don't bring in manure. Of course, I don't use artificial fertilizers, and so I need all that residue. So I like tall stalks. I like tall straw for my field crops because I chop it and put it back in the ground, and that's organic matter for the bugs to chew on and produce plant available nutrients in the next couple of years. So I tend to look for varieties that are from the period before they were developed and bred with significant quantities of nitrogen fertilizers and chemical assistance. My white wheat is called Yamhill. It was bred here at Oregon State in the 1950s for the Yamhill Valley, which is where I farm. And I thought, well, if I want to grow red wheat, first off, nobody grows red wheat in the western part of Oregon. But if I want to grow red wheat, I probably don't want to buy a modern variety. So I went looking for some old ones like Red Fife, Rouge de Bordeaux. Well, good luck finding a seed distributor that'll sell you that. They don't. But there are some folks that are growing it, and they'll sell it for food. You can buy whole wheat berries. Well, that's just another word for a seed. And as long as it hasn't been milled, which makes it kind of pointless for planting, and hasn't been sterilized in some fashion, a seed is a seed, and it wants to grow. So I ordered bags of seed called wheat berries, and did a field trial of my own for them. Very interesting stuff. The Red Fife and the Rouge de Bordeaux really like it around here. They did fine. Coruscant wheat, some of you may know it by the trademark Kamut, not so much. And when I had grown that out, I took the combine and just mowed it all down, ran it through the combine, mixed it all together, and that's going to be my red wheat. And it's going to be mostly Red Fife and Rouge de Bordeaux. And I'll keep planting that over and over again to get some experience with it. The last thing is barley. I had a customer who wanted me to grow out malting barley, picked a couple of varieties. I thought, I'll do a field trial-ish to see what I can learn about that. And planted them both, ran them out. They performed almost identically, but they were very different in their appearance. And in the lower right, you can see I planted about 100-foot wide swaths, about 1.5 acres each, 5 times. And they were really pretty. They were very, very different, very distinct, and in terms of brewing performance, they were identical. All right, there's got to be a way to do it. There we go. So, some of the details, I mentioned them already. Buckwheat, it's pollinated by insects. It's not self-pollinated. So, I had all these varieties. All the genes were there together. Mix and match thanks to the bumblebees mostly and native pollinators that I have on my farm. I replanted it in 2023. Crop failure. The day after I planted it, it stopped raining. I don't have irrigation. Nothing came up. The only reason I still have buckwheat to work with is that I saved a little bit. I didn't plant it all. The first generation, then, was harvested last year, and I'll be putting the second generation in the ground in about a month. The red wheat, which I call redheads, because Brise de Bordeaux and the red type, it'll be the first generation of that mix being planted last fall, and I'll harvest it this summer. And then my barley, I mentioned it already. The first field trial I didn't like any of them. And so I just sold it and went looking for other varieties. And I'll be planting the first generation of that mix this fall. So, in what little time I've got left, some observations, and some of these I've mentioned already. If you're going to develop a locally optimized variety of something, whether it's buckwheat, red wheat, barley, brassicas, you need to be saving the seed. If you're going to try and do open pollinated where you have the rights to replant it year after year, you've got to be set up to save your own seed or have somebody who's doing that. In my experience as a grain grower, old varieties are good for starting with. They've been developed to grow requiring fewer inputs, especially fertilizer inputs, and they're non-proprietary. So you don't have to worry about patents or the Plant Variety Protection Act. Another observation I mentioned with the wheat, you can get seed from some pretty unobvious sources. Seed distributors, sure. Seed breeders and researchers, definitely, and they've got some really interesting varieties. But if you're looking for an old variety, find somebody who's growing it and selling it, and just see if you can get some straight from them. Plant scientists have a lot to teach amateur farmer breeders like me. The OSU Extension team here has been absolutely marvelous to me in answering what would be really rookie questions to them, but I just don't know the answer. So, for example, how long will it take before all those buckwheat varieties have kind of blended themselves together? Well, I got kind of an answer for that. I'm thinking if I can keep that one going for 5 or 8 generations, I may have something interesting. Wheat, on the other hand, is going to take a lot longer because it's self-pollinated. I didn't know that. I do now. So talk to your researchers. They can teach you a lot. I almost lost my buckwheat to that one crop failure, and if I had put in 100% of my seed, that would have been it. And finally, I'm a production grain grower, so I grow, large quantities, truckloads or half truckloads of whatever it is I do, and that doesn't mean that I can't be a breeder or a participant in breeding. But doing it on an agronomic scale is quite a bit different. It's not the same as doing it on research plots. And there's a synergy involved. I would not have gotten those great genetics from the buckwheat except from researchers. They wouldn't have gotten the experience of growing it on a full field scale without me. So there's a real synergy that you can pull off there. That's it for what I have to say. I suspect there may be some questions. I really hope so. That's always fun. So thank you.
Yeah, we've got 5 minutes for questions. If you have any questions, please feel free to step up to the mic and ask away.
And I realize there may also be questions online. But, yeah, go ahead. Yeah, please. Yes, go ahead.
Okay, so the clock.
Yeah, let's see what I'll make a night.
I just like on. Is this mic on? Okay, so the question was, once I'm combining varieties of grains together and mixing them and planting them again, are they maturing at the same time? And the answer is yes, because I'm working with very similar varieties. The two barleys, for example, 2-row malting barleys, were very similar. Ditto with the wheats. Okay, thank you. You're welcome.
Thanks. Do we have one more question?
Michael, do you have a question coming down? No. Okay, why don't we take that one, and then we'll get the next one over here.
The question from an online participant was, how many generations would a conventional seed need to be grown before it would be considered an organic or adapted to organic?
Right. So I think you'd want to talk to a certifier for sure, but just 1 year. I mean, you can plant a non-organic seed as long as you're growing it in an organic system. So let's say you have a certified organic farm. You could buy a non-organic brassica seed, OP, and grow it out in an organic system and harvest it for seed, and it can be organic seed.
So in terms of having certified organic seed, that's right. And if you're talking about whether a seed variety is adapted for organic practice on production, it'll take longer. And it'll honestly depend on the kind of pressures you're putting on the seed as it's growing out. I've got terrible soil, so those varieties are under real severe pressure, which means it's going to winnow out the losers fast. And it also depends on how quickly, how much those genes mix. Something like wheat, which is self-pollinated, you don't get a lot of genetic drift from one plant to the other in one generation, which is why the researcher I spoke to said that it's going to take maybe 10, 15 years before you've really got a blend of those genetics.
Good, thank you. Yeah, last question. Just a question about the buckwheat project. Buckwheat, very exciting and amazing crop. And I'm wondering, through a participatory framework, how much you will be continuing to work with some of the researchers as you make selections on your farm ongoing, or if you can just talk about that from your work.
Well, I'm shameless about asking researchers for help. And I'm also not a long-time farmer, so I honestly don't think I could do nearly as good a job of looking at plants and choosing the ones to keep and move on with. So I intend to get any researcher, plant breeder, grower, anybody who is interested in buckwheat, red wheat, whatever I've got, to come look and play. And if they want to take a little bit, it's a question of how many bucketfuls they want. Because when you're growing on an agronomic scale and you're harvesting thousands of pounds of seed, if somebody wants 5 pounds, take it, please. One of the important principles that I operate under is sharing genetics, sharing experience, sharing varieties. That's the way we're going to learn this.
Great, thank you. I just want to say a huge thanks to Beth and Pryor again for sharing their knowledge. I think they'll be here after the session. If you have more questions for them, definitely come find them. If you want more information about OFRF and the financial and technical support we offer for growers wanting to do their own on-farm trials, whether in breeding or other topics, come find me. I have copies of that publication. And with that, thanks to our speakers, and we'll welcome the next set of panelists up. Good morning, everyone. Can everyone hear me? Yeah. Okay. Well, I'm very excited to be here. My name is Ambar Carvallo. I work at the University of Wisconsin-Madison with Dr. Julie Dawson. And with me, we have Marissa, also from the university, and Erica Kempter from Nature and Nurture Seeds. And online, we have Keith Mueller, which will show in his presentation from a video. So today we're going to be talking and sharing a little bit about our experience on tomato breeding and participatory breeding. Okay. So we have two projects that we're going to be talking about today. We have one that is more of a traditional breeding for adaptation to organic systems in the Midwest. And then we have a second one in which we've built more of a collaborative network to support local and smaller breeders working on tomato as well. So we're going to share a little bit about the methods that we use, how we got this thing started, and then the challenges that we saw, future opportunities, and we do have some varieties that we're excited to share, so we'll do a little highlight on that. So in terms of the tomato selection program, this started around 2017, in which there was some funding to start supporting farmers in terms of identifying the different needs that were in the different traits that weren't available in tomato varieties currently available, usually developed for conventional systems and not so much for organic systems. So we defined the breeding objectives in collaboration with farmers through roundtables at different conferences, including this and also Moses, which is now Marble Seed, and also looking at research, and that's how we define the objectives. And so with that, we prioritize yield, disease resistance. We have septorial leaf spot and early blight, which are two fungi that are very prevalent in the Midwest, and fruit quality was very important. So here I wanted to show you a little bit more. As I said, we took direct feedback from the farmers and direct conversations, but as well we had a research done from Lori Hoagland and team that they identified, sorry, I'm going to stop looking there because they're already a bit weird. They identified the key traits that the farmers were looking for or that were not finding in current varieties. So flavor was high in that list, and then disease resistance and fruit quality in general. And so with that, with the farmers' feedback, we went to some of the variety trials that we've done in 2015, 2016, to identify potential parental lines that we could use on this new breeding program. So here on the right, you're just seeing the different reports that we had for the different variety trials that we carry out on stations. And so this is a reduced crossing scheme. Because we're looking at a variety of traits, we selected varieties that were excellent in some traits and not so great in others. So we have some heirlooms that were really good in flavor, interesting shapes. And then we had other high-yielding varieties like Defiant and other commercial lines that maybe they're not so tasty, but very productive. And so farmers were definitely using them. So with that, we made different crosses. Most of the crosses were done on station, and then we started collaborating with farmers and sending seed to them in the second generation or the third generation doing some on-station selection and also on-farm selection, and then doing a lot of back and forth on selecting on both sides and sharing that seed. And so from that, we got to further advanced generations like F6 or F7, where we started to see more uniformity. So on station, we're both doing on open field and under high tunnel production. And then we quickly realized that the pressure of Septoria and early blight was just too high, and we didn't have strong genetic resistance to that. So to continue evaluating in the field wasn't really a good option. So we moved to the high tunnel, which we also have other disease pressures like powdery mildew and leaf mold, but we had a better control because we follow good management, like as a farmer would do, and in general we had good results. So we continued selection only in the high tunnel. And so, as I mentioned, we were focusing on yield, so we would do marketable yield, and diseases would do disease scoring. In fruit quality, we measure Brix and acidity, but also doing a lot of sensory analysis, including tastings, where we evaluated the sweetness, acidity, umami, intensity, and overall. So we would carry out some panel tastings with the researchers, but also the public. And so further on the process, we had a moment in which we had 5 to 6 farmers that were really a big part of this project and doing that on-farm selection. So here there's an open field where we yet haven't shifted to only high tunnel. So that was really valuable information in terms of how the quality of the fruit was coming through in the open field compared to the high tunnel. But then in 2022 and forward, we started using the seedlings platform, which allowed us to include more farmers. So we had around 10 to 15 throughout those years. So that really allowed us to get more feedback on what was working for the farmers. And so, but early on, before seedlings, we would just do the manual evaluation and do more of what did you like, what you didn't like, how was the disease pressure in your field, and then kind of like condensating that information to decide what to move forward on the project. So there were things happening at the same time on station and on farm, and so the traits of interest were the same, but the evaluation, the eye is different, right? So I thought it was interesting to share here that we had a cross OSA 404, which is a variety released by, or not released, but developed by the Organic Seed Alliance, and we crossed it with Japanese Flagtifel, which is kind of like this darker umami flavor variety and heirloom. And so on station, we continue with that red fruit selection, kind of like the classic tomato. And then a farmer did a selection on their system, and somehow they obtained this stripy fruit. So we're not sure if there was some weird crossing over there, but regardless, there was this difference on what they selected and what we selected, so that kind of like diverged that selection, and so that was interesting to see. Kept more of the heirloom looking fruit, right? So also because small farmers or farmers that sell for the fresh market are focusing a lot in color and shape, it made sense that they would select for something a little bit more interesting, more away from the classic red tomato. But not only we worked with farmers, but as well we worked with chefs in the area to really understand the potential of these new varieties. Some of them were great for salads, some of them better for soups and things like that. So it was really good to get that feedback from the direct consumer, not just the people that eat at their homes, but the chefs that farmers also collaborate closely. And so from all of this, we published the results, and I'm not going to go into detail. If you're interested, you can access the publication, but it was a good opportunity to really showcase the feedback from the farmers and how they were able to do their selections and how sometimes they diverge from our selections on station. So if you have any questions about that, I'll be happy to talk more at the end. But I wanted to do a little highlight on the variety. So this was a long process that we did in tomato selection and breeding. So there's 2 varieties that we're now pushing for release. We really want them to go out there and kind of like support the farmers in what they were looking for. So we have two varieties that are kind of like on this medium-sized slicer, very productive, like good, interesting flavor profiles. So we're doing the final evaluation and potentially going to be releasing that. And then we have two other lines that we were excited about, but then there's some issues in the fruit quality in terms of the cracking because they're more heirloom looking. They have more of these issues, but they do have interesting flavor profiles. And so with these two, what we're doing is collaborating with the seed company that are interested in this genetic material to include it in continuous breeding programs, which was also the objective of this project, to generate material that maybe is not releasable, but can be continued to be used in new breeding programs by farmers or other breeders in the area. So we saw challenges in this process in terms of the disease pressure. As I mentioned, we're focusing both at the beginning in open field and high tunnel, and then we had to shift to only high tunnel. We saw that there were some differences in the selection criteria between the on-station research and the on-farm, but we maintained a good communication to know that we were all going the same direction. And then we did have some difficulty maintaining the farmer engagement, especially because the bulk of this work started when COVID was happening, so we lost a little bit of the track of what was happening. But then through Seedling, that was a really good opportunity to reach out to more people. So yeah, some of the impacts that we see is that having these varieties are going to be available for farmers, and then this new genetic material that can be used for continuing breeding programs, and also a reference work frame to use in other crops, in other regions. I know I haven't expanded a lot in all of the methods, but I'll be happy to talk more about it at the end. So now I'm going to leave it to Marissa to share some of the collaborative plant breeding network.
Good morning, everyone. Thank you for being here. I'm going to give a brief overview of the project and then hand it over to Keith and Erica to talk about their participation in it, and then I'll come back for some summary and conclusions about it. So the Seed to Kitchen Collaborative started in 2014 when Julie Dawson started at the University of Wisconsin-Madison. And like Ambar mentioned, the beginnings were just variety trials of vegetables and fruit crops, and that continued for some years until 2019, where we submitted an Organic Agriculture and Research and Extension Initiative grant with the goals of creating new varieties developed especially for organic systems, and to build a network from plant breeder all the way through the system to consumer, and then to contribute to the development of Seedling, which at the time was a newer online platform that focused on simplifying data collection, communication, and computation for trials. In 2020, we were thankfully awarded the grant, and then the participatory trials continued for the next couple of years. So just quickly introduce Keith. He is a tomato breeder and farmer down in Kansas City, Missouri, of KC Tomatoes, and a key collaborator on the project, and he's thankfully submitted a video for us today.
My name is Keith Mueller, and I'm here to report on the line 17803 as part of the program. It's a high beta carotene line, which has more vitamin O adapted to organic systems. I'm in Kansas City, Missouri. I'm in the middle of the country. To affects what I'm selecting, show you here why. So I'm the yellow dot, almost dead center of the country. The red circle is a general area of the upper Midwest, so I'm in the far southwest corner of this program. The blue line down the center of the map. To the right is moisture. To the left, it's pretty darn dry until you get to the Rockies. So I'm right here on that line. It's much drier here. I've bred tomatoes in North Carolina, and it's a much different area. With all the moisture, the disease problems and the insects are a lot harder to deal with, and I don't see that. So I don't get to breed for those kinds of things here. So it behooves me to be able to see my lines in different environments and work with people as part of the program to develop something that's all over and that I can get data from. so that when I approach maybe a seed company, I can say, hey, look, this is what it does in this system and how it works. So when Julie contacted me about this, I was like, yeah, let's do this. And I chose this line because it had a lot of potential for things to scrape. Part of this, too, was also working with seeding. So I knew that they were going to get a lot of data, a lot of variation. So it's like enough people looked at it, you'd see a spectrum of things. So the line is large fruited lines that worked with in the past that ended up crossing the pink tiger, which is one of Fred Temple's lines. It was a plum, pink plum with stripes. So it was rather small really, but it had great flavor, great nami. Crossed that with that larger line that was satiated, or the beefsteak characteristic to the seed carpet for the seed cells within inside the fruit, which contributes to size. So I want to get a larger size basically, with great flavor and nami. On the other end was Little Lucky cross with Sungold, the light gray above is the past history. Little Lucky came from Prairie, and Sungold had the beta carotene, so got really great flavor from Little Lucky. It was a yellow bicolor, and the really great flavor from the Sungold I wanted to bring out and combine together. That created a line called Sun Lucky, but for this I used one of the other family lines that was from that had larger fruit. So the idea is to get away from the smaller fruits and try to get a larger size beta carotene fruit with really great flavor and some unique occurrences. So I chose these lines to give to the program, Carvallo, just a 16H11 carrot, and you see it strike them in there and apologize for the color. It's field photo, so the color didn't come out right. Now, this is Sun Lucky actually, so it's very much like the parent line, and it's bicolor. See a little bit of bicolor there in the center, and beta carotene fruit. This is some of the differences you're seeing as far as shape, but it's a great shape. Yeah, elongated is actually smaller than it compares to these photographs, but this is a more elongated shape, larger than Pink Tiger, but very similar. It's got fasciation on the shoulders. You see a little bit of funking the strip, but not a lot. This fruit had fasciation. It was much larger and more round. I didn't select it because some of these rough shoulder tended to split in those areas, so I selected against that. I was looking more for smooth shoulders, but round, larger fruit. That's called locule count. It also contributes to size. And here's interior differences. This one has beta carotene, but typical beta carotene would look like. That pink in there is not typical. That's picking up the bicolors from the Little Lucky. And this is another one. You're going to take it at another time of the day. So the light's different, but it was more red, and you can see the red banding around outside of the skin, but it is orange in the inside. Not like this one, but this had an excellent flavor, but it really wasn't what we were going for. I'd also note that there's quite a bit of variation for the green striping trait within this family, which really kind of surprised me. I heard about it before from others, but I'd never seen it like this. We didn't really take any data on that. I'm just flattening it. So I got a lot of assistance from quite a few people, and here locally, Zach Hawkinstead with Kansas State Extension helped me out by setting up particularly the seed rate variety trials. I'll never seem to have time to do all that and get it all together and do the other things I needed to do. So Zach kind of took that over and got a lot of data for me. Here's the 17H03 lines, and then in the center is the check line, which is Clementine from Johnny's, talking with Peter Zook and some others, it's emails, that is probably a beta 13 line. I'm pretty sure it is, but I don't know for sure. So comparing yield, we were getting two lines that were just really the same as split in time. We were a little bit different, but statistically the same. And as far as flavor, there was improvements in flavor over split time from lines 4 and 16. Of course, that's not all lines made it into these tests. It was what was available at the time when they took the tests. And the tests were done at different sites. So overall, 16 and 4 were looking very much like Clementine. Wasn't that much of a difference statistically, and others were similar. So we are at the same or improving. Here's an example where 4 went short because it was breadfruit and fasciated shoulders, and the crack tend to be misshapen. I didn't select for that one. However, within that family, I did make a selection. I'll show you later. This is more typical of what we were seeing, and this is the high-flavored, high-yielding one. And this is more typical of what I selected for myself as far as this rounded fruit instead of more elongated. I'm more of a beefsteak. It's got locule canal. So that's the appearance of what I'm going for, really. This kind of red flame, looking appearance, red into orange and yellow. And this one struck me. This is August 23rd. That is a plant that is on the 6th strain, it looks like. It had been harvested before, but I wanted to point this out because if this was in North Carolina, or even like St. Louis, this time of year, half the foliage would be gone. It would be wiped out from either early blight or septoria or some other foliar issue. But there's a little bit of leaf curl, and then there's a little bit of spotting, which is probably nutritional. But that's it. I mean, that's really amazing. We didn't spray these plants with anything. We just fertilized them, watered them on drip, and they have that real thick mulch. And it was a very dry year, so that kept the moisture off the foliage. So here's 14, and number 1, I selected more rounder fruit. Time period is compared to Clementine. So I've got a lot of data. I've got different grow outs, got different information for people coming back about the flavor, what they did like, what they did and such. But, one of my problems was being able to get enough data and actually interact with people. And to hire enough people to set up the tasting things. We have a problem here with setting up markets. I'm in a bi-state area, so I have to get a license from Missouri. I have to get a license from Kansas. I need a food handling license. I need a permit for every farmer's market I go to. So my friend Alicia at Stacy Farm School, where they teach kids to do gardening and learn life skills, allowed me to set up. And, it really reinforced what I knew, but it really brought it to my attention. But these younger kids, the younger generation, will accept an orange tomato. They'll try it readily, and they love it. And, that really brought to my attention, something that's been bothering me for years. And here's my son, and here's the selection. These two kids were at the West Garden, and they helped out in the garden. They would try the orange tomatoes. In fact, they loved them. This is Lewis. Lewis wouldn't even taste one. It wanted nothing to do with orange or yellow tomatoes. Because in his mind, tomato is rare. It's grandpa's garden, all that heirloom stuff that people carry around with them. So we're at a point, I believe, where the next generation has had exposure to things like Sungold and other better tasting orange varieties. So it's going to be accepted more in the markets in the future, in the next 10, 15 years, hopefully. But that really woke me up because since the 90s, I've been bringing with these things, trying to get more diversity back, trying to rescue these things from the germplasm. They're just sitting there in language. Nobody's using them. If you cross them with the right material, they taste great. You just got to find the right parents to cross them with and get something out of it. And they're all pretty much small size, so they all have to be made larger. And my thinking is getting these lines out there past where I have and get them to the next generation that can start using mark-resistant selection to put disease resistant into them. And that's really important to me because this is the last meeting of New York Seed Alliance that we went to. And here's me, Glenn from Hawaii, Fred Hinkle, and Prairie Brunier. Fred passed away last year, but his Pink Tiger is legacy and this mine and as well. And Craig's contribution is there too. So, being able to pass all this on, give it to the next generation, and take things a step further and use the diversity is really important to me. It's actually why I agreed. I'm not so much about the money as I am trying to do with those goals. And so, I'm really interested. I have issues with being able to grow out stuff appropriately. So if you're willing and you have the ability to do that, help me, please contact me. I do want to make money. I do have stuff in the pipeline. I have been able to meet with some seed companies, different interests there that we'll see. But, as far as Christmas, I'm really wanting to get this out there and be able to continue and then take things to the next step for the next generation. So if you can help, contact me. Thank you. Hi, my name is Keith Mueller, and I'm here to report on the line 17 into County as part of the program. It's a high beta carotene line that would vitamin A adapted.
So sorry. How do I? There we go. And then I'm going to introduce Erica from Nature Nectar Seeds over in Michigan. Thank you, Marissa and Ambar. I'm Erica Kempter with Nature Nectar Seeds. I'm a farmer and tomato breeder. I love tomatoes. Raise your hand if you like tomatoes. Yay! So, just a little background about myself. I originally can blame John Navazio for getting me into plant breeding. I met him on an airplane in like 2022 or something, and he was, "What's your favorite tomato?" And I said Juliet, and he said, "Well, that's a hybrid." And I'm like, "Yeah, what's wrong with that?" And he's like, "Someday you're going to open your seed catalog and it's gone. You could make it an open pollinated Juliet." So it has been 20 years that I've been actually trying to make an open pollinated Juliet, but I started doing a bunch of other classes and creating other things. But yeah, John was to blame for that. And then Carol Duffy, reading her book really helped me understand the genetics behind tomatoes and all of the techniques. So thank you to them. So on our farm, we do. Does this have a pointer on it? Yeah, it doesn't matter. I can just. That's okay. So on our farm, we usually grow a lot of tomatoes. I have to, put some self-control on the number of bed feet we grow. There's me with my tomatoes, and then we do harvest festival in the fall, and we always do a tomato tasting. And then we also do a lot of tomato tastings with our interns and our staff, and just bring people out. Because once I identify something that I like, I need to know if there's anybody else, do other people like it. So that's what we do on our tomato. But doing this collaborative project was really great because we could send the seeds out to other people and be evaluated through their seedlings platform, which is incredible to be able to gather data and get other people's opinions. So this just shows also the type of tomatoes I'm working with mainly. Yeah, how do I move it forward? Oh, I'm like,
Take care. Okay, thank you. So my general breeding objectives, I like salad-sized tomatoes. I have worked a little bit with some cherries because Juliet has some probably like current parentage in it. But I like those oval tomatoes. When you're a farmer, picking those cherry tomatoes to fill pints is a real pain in the butt. So the saladettes are kind of a really good in between salad snacking tomato, but they're bigger and easier. So those are my favorites, and that's kind of why I fell in love with Juliet to begin with. And then I've been adding all these other traits in there, including stripes and unusual color combinations. I'm always looking for flavor. What's the point of breeding a bad flavor tomato? That's really important. And vigor, really early on, John Avazio was always like, vigor. You got to select for vigor, and especially in tomatoes with OB tomatoes, because they're just not going to have the vigor that a hybrid has. So you have to select for that. And then in the upper Midwest, I'm always looking at disease. And eventually I'd like to do some Marissa-assisted breeding with that, but especially the foliar diseases. Septoria is getting particularly bad on our farm. And obviously OP tomatoes is what I work on. And then I want my tomatoes to be adapted to organic farming systems and field conditions. I like growing field tomatoes. I think using a lot of hoop space for that, that's what a lot of farmers do, and use the high tunnels. But I really like the field conditions, and so I want them to be able to perform well under field conditions. So these are the cross that I used that we included in this collaborative breeding project. I crossed the Juliet and the Blush because I had been working with the Juliet for a long time. So the Juliet's that red one on the right side. And I had been working with it for a long time, and I knew I had some really good qualities, but I was having trouble when I was trying to make it into like an OP Juliet. I was having trouble with the flavor. So thanks to Fred Heppel and his gorgeous Blush tomato. It's one of my top favorite tomatoes, and it's about the same size and shape as Juliet. And so I crossed those two, primarily for the shape and size of the Blush, and also for the great flavor. But it also has the green stripe trait, which is what Keith was talking as well, which gives tomatoes a striped appearance. And it actually has yellow flesh, and it has clear skin, which also can create pink tomatoes and lots of other color combinations. I chose the Juliet too because it's super vigorous. It has a lot of disease resistance, and in general, it's just a really good tomato. And so you can see in this photo, and then in the next photo, you can see some of what I got out of that cross. Everything from yellow tomatoes to pink tomatoes to red tomatoes. We got cherries and saladettes. I also got some larger tomatoes, more like a striped Roman kind of tomato, but I don't really like them. They're a little too firm. It's mostly from the Juliet. It has some like paste tomato in its parentage. I didn't even include those in the pictures because I like fresh shooting tomatoes. But we got those too. And then you can see some of these have stripes on them and some of them don't. This also shows, these are the kind of the saladettes that I was going for. And so, in 2020, I grew out 72 plants. Ideally, I would have grown out more than that, but that's okay. That's what I grew out. And instead of doing like line or family selection that early on, I just did what's called mass selection. So I basically took all the tomatoes that were, say, just red, that weren't showing any of the striping, and mashed those together and saved the seeds from those. As long as, I removed any plants that didn't taste good or didn't have, had low vigor or were, bad with disease. And then from there, I did the mass selection. So then any that were yellow, that were saladettes, I put together, and any of these like red striped, and then there were also pink ones, which I didn't save at the time, and just did this mass selection. And then these were the seeds that I then distributed through the project. So the collaborative process worked like this. So I sent them the seeds, and then to Madison, and they then took those seeds and sent them out to other farmers. And what was really exciting about this project is lots of different farmers then got to have all, it was really a wide cross. And so a lot of genetic variability in there. And then they could do their own selections and find something that they liked and then send those back to us. So that was kind of the original material that we worked with, were those lines that the farmers selected from. And then I did some selections myself. And then in 2022 to 24, in the wintertime, those were grown out in the greenhouses in UW, which was really an important piece of this collaborative project. As a farmer myself, I don't have the capacity to overwinter and do another season in greenhouses, so it makes the project twice as fast. Normally, to get a tomato to a stabilized line, it can take 7, 8, 9 years, and you can cut the time in half. So this really speeded the project along, and that was really, really important. And in the summertime, these lines would then go back out to the farmers and be evaluated, and also gardeners. So we had lots of people evaluating these, and we would get really good feedback. Here are the traits. I did a screenshot from the seedlink app on the phone, which is super nice to use. Shout out to Nico for all his work on seedlink, and it's been so great to be able to use that to do evaluations instead of did everything on paper and then I'd go and type it in before. And here's the different traits that people were evaluating her. And then I also my role too was to help figure out, okay, when people are doing selections or evaluations, what are the traits that are important that we want to look at, and what are important to me in this project. So this is our first introduction this year from this project. It is basically like an improved pink tiger. So it is an elongated like cherry. It's like like a Juliet with stripes, except for it's pink. It's not red. And it is super vigorous and performs really, really well. And this was originally, actually, we had sent it out to one of the farmers, Greg Reynolds. He's in Minnesota. And he was the one that made this selection. And then we continued to evaluate it. And then at some point, what's so cool about this project, so they, all the stuff they go on the station, they take pictures of it. And so in the winter times, I would go through all those pictures and be like, which one of these do I want to try? As well as I would look at the evaluations and how well they were rating. And then there were some of them like, okay, I want to do these on my farm. And I grew this one this year. And I was like, this one is a winner. We released it through our seed company, Nature Nurture Seed, and it is available this year. And it's awesome. It's bigger than Pink Tiger is a great variety. It's a little on the small side. This one is bigger. It's very early. It's earlier than Pink Tiger. Much more vigorous. Pink Tiger is not the most vigorous plant in the world. So it was really exciting to have this one. And then I have one more that I am getting ready to figure out what to do with. It is my top baby of this cross that I made. And I wasn't really working on cherries, but plant breeding is both like a science and an art. You have to also just listen to what the plants are doing and what they're telling you. And I almost didn't taste the parents of this tomato because I wasn't looking for a pink cherry. And it actually was growing out a bunch of yellow cherries, and it was within the yellow cherries. And I was tasting, and it was getting late. I tasted so many of that day. At some point, I thought I tasted 20 a day. At some point, the palate just gets worn out, And I was like, well, it's so pretty. The sun was just like hitting it. I was like, okay, I'll taste it. And I was like, wow, this is a winner. And sometimes this was like at the, F3 stage or something. And sometimes you lose the flavor after that, but it really has maintained the flavor. And I just keep selecting really hard for flavor. So it's like a pink bumblebee. And it's really early. It's a week or two earlier than pink bumblebee. And the flavor is great. And it's also, for an OP, very vigorous and productive too. So I'm calling it Jewel, and stay tuned for the next few years. This one will be coming out. And then just some of the advantages of this program is as a farmer and breeder, every year I'm like, yeah, this year I'm going to do replicated trials, I can never, do those kinds of things. And this allowed this replication to be done all over the upper Midwest. We collected a lot more data. We also are trialing at all these different environmental sites, right, under different field conditions in the upper Midwest. And only big companies can do that. I can't do it as a little tiny seed company and farmer breeder. So we get a lot more data for how well these are going to work for other people, because maybe they perform great on my farm and we don't do well other places. So that's a huge advantage. And then I mentioned being able to overwinter them or advance them in the greenhouses has also been a big advantage. And then working with all these fabulous people, and we can all, exchange ideas and work together as a team. So that's just has been really, really incredible. Thank you.
Thank you, Erica. All right, just a brief little summary and conclusions for us here. So the benefits of the participatory breeding program and collaboration the nature of it is that it created a network across the upper Midwest, from Keith and Erica plant breeders to the farmers and gardeners who participated in the trials over the years, to their consumers, and then in our case at the research station, the chefs and the food pantries in our local communities that we worked with. We created a big network across the upper Midwest, which is really helpful when we have crates of now potatoes and peppers that need new homes. We have those homes for them. And also, as you saw, this project started in early 2020 before the pandemic hit. And the decentralization of this between, Erica in Michigan, Keith down in Kansas City, us up in Madison, the spread out nature of it really helped when we couldn't all gather together. We had the network of people able to help and work together. Even if we couldn't be together, we already were together. And then also the creation of region-specific varieties is really important. Lots of tomatoes are bred in California or Florida, which have very different environments than us up in the upper Midwest. And so making a variety that is good for us is really helpful. And then instant results with seedlings was huge for us. Like as Erica mentioned, she would have to either write it all down and then go to a computer where the farmers and gardeners would send us their paper data sheets for us to transcribe. And then we would take that data, crunch the numbers, and then put it up on our website. And that may not, be able to get done before farmers want to make decisions about what to grow the next year. So with instant results from seedlings, you put in your data, you can click live results, see yours compared to others, based on different zones, based on different traits. You can make that decision like instantaneously. You don't have to wait for the researcher to then have to do everything. And also benefit is, as on a research station, if it was just research station, it's just the researcher's thoughts about what is a good variety versus like where we send it out to everybody. Like we got that data, originally started with Greg up in Minnesota, and it creates a lot of diversity in what is the end result of the program, which is, great. We would have that. And then also because we have been trialing for years, we have a bunch of data backed up for these varieties. We can take them to seed companies and be like, we know this works here, this works well here, has great vigor, and then it's more likely to be adapted by that seed company and picked up and spread across more. And then conclusions on Ambar's project and my own, like she mentioned, is applicable to other crops. We focused on tomatoes on this presentation, but we also worked on peppers as part of the project, and you could do it with any other crop or region as well. And it also helps create a framework for future projects. So Erica can now, with Seedlink, be her own trial manager. She can send out seed to people. It creates, the framework for more and other collaboration between people. And then also with this project, we created 70 different lines of tomatoes and 70 different lines of peppers. So we have a bunch of material in our seed bank that we can use for, future lines, or we can use it as parents for future programs as well. I'm just going to acknowledge all the people that helped us work on this. In our own lab, we have a bunch of students and hourly workers who really helped, everything. And then our collaborating chefs and growers, as well as the station staff at their research stations. They helped us a lot. And then all the different organizations that helped us with funding. Here's some contact info for us. Ambar is working on her PhD, finishing up, and looking for her future. As Keith mentioned in his video, he would love to hear from people as well. So there's his email if you want to grow some of his stuff. Erica mentioned she has her seed company. You should go buy some seeds from her because she is lovely and it helps fund other programs for her and her tomato breeding. And then I just included information for us at the Seed to Kitchen Collaborative, and we have a website as well where you can look at the different trial outcomes from seedling through previous stuff. And that is everything. Thank you all so much for being here. I think we have time for questions. Yeah, if people have any questions.
Thanks all for the presentation. Quick question for Erica. What are the primary disease pressures that you were selecting under for your field production? Is it similar to what Keith was selecting for? I know that,
Yeah,
Septoria early blight.
the Septoria and early blight, the primary.
Do you experience late blight where you are?
It's really intermittent, and I keep thinking like, oh, if we get it, it'll be good because I can do good selection on it. Because Juliet has late blight resistance, and I just don't know because we have gotten such little late blight. But if we get a bad late blight year, then there will be a positive outcome, and I can do selection.
Well, just a quick plug for East Coast growers. We get it predictably every single year. So if you need canaries in the coal mine for late blight, find somebody on the coast. It's every single year now for
Awesome. We'll try to work on the right.
Thanks for the great presentation, and exciting to see those projects coming to fruition. One question that I have mostly is if you could just each maybe comment a little bit on the use of the decentralized breeding versus, on your farms or on station, and kind of what progress you see on the traits of interest, or the genetic gain there, and maybe how that relates to the cost of the different approaches, and then also contrasting, the tomatoes, the participatory decentralized breeding with tomatoes or other self-pollinating crops versus like the peppers would be facultatively outcrossing, or could you see a use case for straight up outcrossers like cucurbits or brassicas?
There's a few questions there. Do you like me? Thank you. In terms of the decentralization, I think, this was definitely something new when I joined the lab, and it was exciting to see how we can collaborate with the farmers and the breeders. So I think thinking more about it from the breeding perspective for a small seed company, it seems like we mentioned, it was a good opportunity to get more of that trialing and replicates that are not possible to do in such a small system. I think it was also a good experience for us to know how to help build that network, and so connecting with the farmers and connecting with the breeders and understanding how we could support them. So what was it that they needed? They needed us to contact the farmers or do more replicates in on-station because maybe we had a little bit more resources to do that, and then send back some of the most the better seed or varieties that we saw. So in terms of that, it was a very back and forth process of learning, right? And I think the second or the third part of your question is like, how would this look in different crops? And yeah, I guess I've been so focused on tomatoes. I haven't been thinking about other crops, but maybe like outcrossing species. Maybe you have more experience with it. I haven't done a lot of breeding with outcrossing. I've just done playing around with outcrossing stuff, so I can't speak to that really well. But I can speak to the kind of whether the good genetics is being selected well or being moved forward. And I think there's some mixed aspects of that. I think one of the advantages on my farm is I grow large population sizes to be able to evaluate, and we were sending out fairly small. A lot of times farmers were only growing 3 plants, 5 plants. So I think that when you need large population sizes, especially to select for flavor, that can be hard. And I did. There was some farmers in Michigan who were doing it, and they were like, we just really don't like the 3 plants that we grew very much, and that's going to happen. I mean, especially when you're going for flavor, like you gotta get rid of a lot of plants. I remember Fred Hempel saying to get blush, he had 300 plants, and ideally you're using better parentage and using these other techniques to not have to grow out that many plants. But if he selected one from 300, it can be challenging to try to get it from 3. But that's also on the station they were growing more. We're growing more. I'm growing more on my farm. So I think by all working together, we were able to really move it forward. Yeah, I fully endorse them. And in order to get to the last question, I'm gonna skip my part.
Well, congratulations to everybody on your projects. This is really my happy place. My question is mostly for Ambar. I'm really curious to know how you plan to distribute the varieties or the lines, what your plans are, where we can get our hands on them, let's say.
Yeah, so the 2 that I mentioned that we're planning to or hoping to release. So we are actually, we need to do more seed production. So we have a small lot of both because we did the last trial or evaluation last year. So I think now that we're working with WARF, with the university, we're working with WARF first to know how we can move forward.
So it'll be a release through the university?
Well, we're in that point, but because we wanted to pledge it through OSSI, the Open Seed Source Initiative, that kind of clashes with WARF and wanted to be the owner of it. So I don't know if I can be very open about this or not, but we're going to present it to WARF to be like, it's good, but it's not that good. So they don't want to take it as but it is good, but it is not that good. So, but we're going to present the data as is. It's not a hybrid. So if we compare with hybrids, only in terms of yield and stuff like that, it's definitely not that great. Just put this recording so I can send it to them and say it's not that good. But and so then we would want to work with so seed company, they can do the actual seed production and get it out there. So yeah, maybe we can keep talking about that.
All right, let's give this group and the other group a big round of applause. Thank you all so much. We'll now have a 15-minute break before the next session. We'll have another session in here, but check your schedules to see where you want to go next, and we'll see you all in about 15 minutes.
What?
And please take a moment to fill out the survey for each of the sessions. It's really helpful for feedback for the future conferences and for our funders.
Right.